Here we go. It is Saturday, so you know what time it is. It is time for a mental health break. Vincent A. Lancy here, and we have a great show to ahead today. Would you like to discuss utilizing shadow work and psychedelic integration as mental health tools to heal and grow? If you said yes to that question, then buckle up because this is the show for you. And we have an international speaker who has traveled the world teaching a blend of spirituality and strategy with us this week. Steven, it's great to see you, and thank you so much for taking the time to join the show.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited to dive into your journey. Another Florida guy right here, so I'm excited about that. But let me give a little background on Steven today before we dive into all things mental health. He has studied an abundance of practices extensively, including mindfulness, business optimization, shadow work, and facilitation, neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, hypnotherapy, and leadership dynamics. These are all things he's covered. And after a decade of mentorship under Tony Robbins, you may have heard that name before, Steven is now focusing on the impact of shadow work on psychedelic integration. He is going to share his story and discuss the powerful role that the art of transformation plays in understanding the human experience. He's also the founder of Mastering Change, the Mental Cleanse Mastermind. So he's got value coming from all angles today. Buckle up, get ready. And I'm about to get ready. I am about ready. Excuse me. I'm just so excited. I can't keep my words in to kick this show off today. But be sure to stick around for the spotlight story at the halfway point. We are very fortunate to have Steven here with us, an expert on shadow work, something I can learn a whole lot more about. So we're going to dive into this NCSL article titled The Benefits of Shadow Work and How to Use It in Your Journey. So stay tuned for that. But if it is your first time with us here on a mental health break, this is the platform where I've had the privilege of sitting down with different mental health advocates and professionals each week since January 2020 to help you on your journey. Together, we normalize that conversation around mental health. I'm about ready, Steven. Let's dive into it. What led you to be here today? Describe your mental health journey for us from wherever you feel comfortable.
Yeah, well, I mean, real simple trauma. Like when I was 3 years old, trapped in a basement by my stepmom, she beat me, she pulled my hair out, starved me, um, locked me in a basement all day long while my dad was at work, and then she would let me out. If you say anything, I'll kill you and your sister both. This went on for a while. I mean, pre-verbal. Mom and dad are God at 3 years old. So it was this feeling all the time that came over me of you're going to be trapped in a basement, and that followed me my entire life. This you're going to try to trap me, and it caused wreaked all kinds of havoc. And so it was really pulling on that root, trying to figure out what in the world is wrong with me. Why am I thought I was broken. I thought that I was, just the worst of the worst. The amount of shame that I carried around with me consistently was astounding. And I went and did this thing called shadow work. April 2000 was my first shadow ceremony, and I wasn't, by no means, this is not something that cures. You're either doing your work or not doing your work, but was introduced to the work in 2000, and something in me said, yeah, that's it. And I started following it, and I started traveling, spending, well over the 10,000 hours. And then I saw Tony stand some guy up, and within 20 minutes, there's no way you can forget whatever it is that you just learned about your life. Like it was like, that's it. Like I want to be operating. I knew I needed time in the box. I knew I needed to get. So then I went and worked for Tony. Meanwhile, I'm still traveling around. He commissioned me to then to interview over 10,000 businesses to look at what was working, not working. Well, my calling was shadow work, and so I found that shadow is at play in practically every business challenge that you can come across. And even if it's not at the undertone, the reason you're missing it is typically shadow as well. So it just continued to deepen and deepen until finally, right around the time your podcast started, COVID, about a month before COVID, I was introduced to this opportunity to go drink ayahuasca, which is the strongest form, DMT, strongest form of hallucinogen, the Peruvian brew that the shamans drink, right? And I belong to a church here called Soul Quest here in Orlando, as a matter of fact, and went there, and within 72 hours, I got about a decade's worth of therapy, and 2 weeks later, quit my job working with Tony, and I've been working with plant medicine and doing my own thing with what I've learned, chasing this thing here behind me on my wall for the past 3.5 years now.
Well, thank you for having the courage to share all that, leading us to find your passion. What is one of your biggest takeaways from taking that? I am a Jets fan, so Aaron Rodgers, this is his thing. He just did this whole retreat on that and found his clarity, found what he needed. What are some of your takeaways from this as someone who's just looking to learn more to educate our audience? But before we get to that, I'd love to hear a quick word from our show sponsor, Tampa Counseling and Wellness, and you could find all of their information in the show description.
Are you constantly exhausted and overwhelmed? Do you struggle with your confidence or self-esteem? Are you ready to live a life with more passion, courage, and excitement? At Tampa Counseling and Wellness, we want to be there for you every step of the way. While we understand that change may be difficult, we have a proven track record of helping our clients live a more joyous and meaningful life. Whether you are looking to overcome some current life challenges or you are looking to do some deeper healing, we are here to help you. Our compassionate approach to therapy is rooted in building your confidence and insight while helping you gain mastery of your life. If you would like to learn more about our services or you would like to schedule a free consultation with one of our clinicians, please visit us at www.tampacounselingandwellness.com or simply call or text us at 813-520-2807. We look forward to growing with you, Tampa Counseling and Wellness, where it is okay to not be okay.
Well, ayahuasca it's not for everybody, first off. I don't believe that everybody should be doing everything. It's not a panacea, but it is, if there were a God, as a shadow guide, if there was a God that I worshiped, it would be, I call her Mother Aya. It seems like this plant, it's actually a vine, for some reason knows more about me than I know about me. And what you realize is it's because it just removes all the blocks. You can see what's really going on. And it has a way of taking you right to whatever it is that's really got you stuck. Most people live on the surface. Being born isn't living. It's just the invitation.
Right.
Plato says the unexamined life is not worth living. And then what that means is the mind is built with layers and layers and layers and layers of story. We're standing on top of all these stories to make more story. It's built for meaning, but 3.5 billion years of survival-based programming we've been hijacked for survival-rooted thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ayahuasca and many other plant medicines are doing is rewriting the code in the ego so that we can learn to live. We can finally take this human experience for a test drive. So it really is a nice pathway if you really want to start to connect with the fullness of you, live in your axis mundi, your center, find what your calling is, where you're supposed to be. It's a heart medicine that starts to open all that up so you can start to understand at a deeper level what's going on.
Thank you for sharing that. Everyone out there, you see how committed he is to the mental health world, the self-progression world, the self-development world. Everyone out there, we are all a work in progress. You are not alone. Keep striving for baby steps in the right direction. He is a great resource here. Be sure to stick around to the end of the show to find out where you can find him online, how to get in touch with him. But before the spotlight story, I'd love to help out our audience a little more here, Steven. What are some of your favorite things to do for your mental health?
For my mental health, I read. I'm a voracious reader, obviously. And then I myself am a practitioner of shadow work. So shadow work, to be a good guide, you have to be a practitioner first and foremost.
I like that.
And so right now I'm attending 1, 2, 3 different integration groups. One I'm basically running, but if I had to do work in that container, I could. And then one container where my students and my fellow guides are kind of running it. And then I'm just a member of that group so that if I've got to do some work, I can do that. And then, just the standard stuff. Me and the kids spend whenever we can down at Universal and, spending time doing that. I've got a ritual that I do every morning to get myself grounded in how I want to show up, which has proven invaluable. Now I've been doing it now 23 years. It's proven extremely invaluable to allow me the ability to show up the way I want to and not the way the system, the algorithms, whatever is going on here, right? I've set my guide and my flag in the sand, and I know who I want to be and how I want to grow.
Is there any preview we can get to this ritual, this morning routine that's driven you for success?
Yeah, well, it's personal, I guess. Let's go there. So every morning I get up and at this right here around my neck, this necklace around my neck, I call it my high me. It was a gift from my wife. And I get up in the morning, I grab this necklace, I get on my knees, and I say what's called the 7-step prayer. For those that are friends of Bill, my Creator, pray you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray you take from me every single defective character, which keeps me from bringing the highest value to you and my fellow man. And then I state my mission. My mission is to create a world where everybody reaches their true potential by making the impossible possible. My purpose is to channel light, love, and grace. I take this necklace, I put it around my neck, and then I go throughout my day doing as best I can to move that dial. And then at the end of the day, I take the necklace off and I go, okay, what did you do today to move that dial? And I'm taking my prefrontal cortex, my reticular activator, and I'm focusing it in on seeing where I had impact, seeing where I made a difference, no matter how small it is, so that my mind can start to wrap around, this is actually who I am. This is actually what I'm doing. This isn't some dream. This is happening. And over the course of 23 years, I find myself in a room, I'm working with some of the most intense. One lady raped at 7 years old. One lady sold to a guy for drugs. I go on and on and on. One guy, a gay guy, raped in high school by 6 straight boys. Like, I can go into just give you.
Right.
And so and they mentioned, then it comes up, and then it's like, I grab my necklace, remember who you are, and I go back to what I call my center, my axis mundi. Okay, remember
Yes.
who you are, remember what you're doing. Okay, now move from here. And so it gives me a starting point, an identity to say, okay, this is who you are, this is what you're here to do. What's the next thing? So that when I'm coming from that understanding of who I'm supposed to be, the purpose that I have. And it's never failed me. The answer's always been, as soon as I step my foot forward, the next question, because I don't have any answers. I'm not a guru. I'm not a therapist. I'm not any of that, right? But the next question then always seems to present itself because I'm coming from a sense of I'm here to serve. And I call it going hollow.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Even for me, my morning routine's always been everything. It used to involve work in the beginning, and now it hasn't. Now it is truly waking up to pray, doing meditation, getting my exercise in. There's a lot of things that have to happen before I open this laptop. It used to be do a little work, then go to the gym, this, that. But I found that I feel, like you said, much more centered and grounded as an entrepreneur. Yourself, these days get quite long, and we have to find ways to balance that. So thank you for sharing. And now we have even more value coming up from our guest of honor. We're diving into that spotlight story. Be sure to scroll down in the episode description because you can follow along with us. It is from Better Up, and it is called The Benefits of Shadow Work and How to Use It in Your Journey. And then we will bring back on Steven to get his takeaways, some expert advice, of course. But here we go. Let's dive into it. We all have traits that we're proud of and traits that we don't feel so confident about. Some of these traits may trigger or embarrass us, so we hide them from the public view. These parts make up your shadow self, and it longs to be heard. However, it is not always easy to come to terms with your shadow self. Many people tend to repress these hidden parts and avoid them to confront their darker side. Even though the shadow still exists, it gets pushed back and may be forgotten. So let's explore what shadow work means, how you can benefit it, and how you can start practicing. The article says, what is your inner shadow? It is composed of parts you feel that you subconsciously reject. The psychiatrist Carl Jung popularized the idea of the shadow self or the inner shadow and defined the collective conscious with 8 different archetypes: self, shadow, anima, animus, persona, hero, wise old man, and trickster. We're going to head and get his take on it in just a few moments. But how your inner shadow affects you, the article puts, is it can have a negative impact on your well-being when you ignore or reject it. And I've been taking that as way as well. This part of yourself craves to be understood and explored. This is because it was ignored and possibly shamed throughout your life. Even if it were less dramatic, we don't feel mentally and emotionally at our best when our shadow is not integrated into ourselves, which is to say, when the shadow and the self are apart. And here are some effects from ignoring your shadow: self-loathing, poor self-esteem, anxiety, depression, self-deceit or deceiving others, offensive behavior toward others, struggling to have healthy relationships, self-sabotage, self-absorption, an inflated ego. I can agree with that. And what is shadow work? We're going to touch on this before bringing on back Steven. Shadow work means the following: working with your unconscious mind to uncover the parts of yourself that you repress or hide from yourself. This can include trauma or parts of your personality that you subconsciously consider undesirable. Anyone can do this work on their own, but considering seeking out a licensed therapist for treatment, especially if you struggle with severe trauma, the article puts as recommended. But one of the goals of shadow work is to be your authentic self. Your shadow isn't a flaw or mistake. It is a natural part of who you are, and it is at heart about developing self-awareness and ultimately self-acceptance and compassion. Before we bring him on, 8 benefits the article gives are the opposites of what the detriments we read: gain more confidence, self-esteem, improve your creativity, build better relationships with others, practicing self-acceptance, discover your hidden talents, improve your overall wellness, increase your compassion towards others, and have better clarity. Steven, I touched on a lot in this article. As someone who is familiar with shadow work, touch on some of the more valuable parts, more important parts from your experience.
Yeah, let me put it this way. You're floating down the river of the story called Vincent in the boat called Now, right? And you've always been in the boat called Now. The physical body is always in the boat called Now. Now the mind can go forward, it can go backwards, it can go down, it can go up, it can go wherever it wants. But you're always floating in the boat called Now. And right now, just in your mind, just say hello. There they are. And they don't ever shut up. They don't ever shut up. And they're not just audio, they're video, they're smells, like smell a rose. You can smell a rose, the sweetness of the rose. You can smell the money in your mind. Like there's money coming your way, right? It's like that. It's a full-fledged Hollywood studio going on up in your head. Well, what's in the boat called Now, I call it your plot or your narrative. It's the meaning that you're making about now. Eckhart Tolle talks about it. Michael Singer talks about it. It's about, this is what I'm defining, how I'm defining my reality right now. But then you have the boat, and the boat called the subconscious. I call it the subconscious or presuppositions. Talking to somebody earlier today, a client earlier today, and they're a CEO, and they're talking about just looking for freedom. Okay, so if you're looking for freedom, well, then what does it mean that you have? Well, I'm trapped. There it is. And so then we have the boat, which is the now. Then we have the subcrust, which is the boat itself. Then we have all the water. Now, most people call the water the unconscious. I think that's a misnomer. It's not the unconscious, it's the deep conscious. These are thoughts that have already been thunk. The mind automates all meaning because it needs to be efficient, and we're constantly evolving, right? And as we're constantly evolving, the mind is constantly going, don't need to pay attention to that, don't need to pay attention to that, don't need to pay attention to that. And it deletes, it distorts, and it generalizes your information. And any meaning that you make, once you make that meaning, we have confirmation bias. It then goes in up against all the other meaning that you've made and says, is this true compared to everything else I know to be true? And once it's validated, then it automates it. You stand on top of it. And since that meaning's already been made, it's a thought that's already been thunk. I don't need to rethink that thought anymore. Thoughts that have been already thunk are cheaper than new thoughts energetically. Once I'm standing on that thought, it's not like that thought disappeared. It's an imprint in my consciousness that's just running. That feeling of being trapped in the basement was always there. And my mind, there was a part of my mind, a whole set of algorithms that had come online called the false self that were projecting out into the world and going, oh, how can I get trapped? Well, the mind fractalizes all meaning. So it took that meaning here, and then how could you get trapped in relationships? How could you get trapped in your career? How could you? And then now I'm focused on, and I'm always experiencing this feeling of being trapped. I believe shadow work is the subjective experience of diving into the deep conscious to unlock insights, break through barriers, and heal wounds that have us caught in cycles of suffering. You can't heal what you don't feel. You can't transmute what you're not willing to take a look at. And so shadow work goes right down into those scary places that your conscious thought says, no, you don't want to deal with that. That's why a lot of people are resistant, because it's the left-handed way. It's the road less traveled. It's the cave you most fear to enter. That's where the shadow is, but that's where your gold is. Like article was talking about, that's where genius sits. That's where my authenticity sits. I can't get there any other way but through going through those parts where I resist being who I truly am.
I love this. I've typed up so many show notes for this when the episode goes live. This, I think, right there is going to be the video preview on YouTube. I mean, you can't heal what you don't feel. A deep look into yourself, the things that we're trapped in for, as men, especially for so long, men were taught to mask our emotions, mask our feelings. And now more and more men are having the courage, like yourself, like myself, to come out here and share our stories, because bottling things in does us no good. At least I can speak for myself. When I bottle things in, it leads to several detriments that I'm not fond of, and unproductivity, unhappiness, you name it. You really just blew that answer out of the water. Thank you so much for that. You're crushing all episode, but we have a little more before I let you go. What is one piece of advice you can give for everyone out there, all of our mental health champions who may be struggling right now?
Yeah. So the first, I'll give you 5 questions.
Love that.
Real easy, simple way to practice basic shadow work. A lot of professionals think it's dangerous. I think that it's more dangerous to walk around asleep. Most of the world's is trying to wake up from a dream that they forgot that they've even haven't. So the first question I ask is, when you find yourself in what I call a constrictive thought, in other words, you have 2 types of emotions. You have expansive emotions, which are love, curiosity, wonder, awe. These take our consciousness. Barbara Fredrickson, it's called the broaden and build theory, and it opens it up like a camera lens, taking in more of my surroundings. Whereas negative emotions like anger, fear, frustration. Notice how when you're angry, all you can think of is the things that piss you off. When you're sad, all you can think of because your mind is now zoning in, because the emotions are bringing in your consciousness. So the first question we ask is, what are you feeling? What am I feeling? What am I feeling in my body right now? Because a lot of time, like you said, we're told to shut that down. We're told to numb it down. We've turned into consumers, not creators. Most people aren't building the ideal. They're just managing circumstance. And they have a 7-lane road to misery and a dirt road to happiness. Like, okay, well, let's take a look at the road you're on. What are you feeling? I'm feeling anger. Okay, great. Second question. Do I feel that way elsewhere in my life? What we're looking for is a pattern. Again, the mind, to operate the brain, you're looking at over 20% of your caloric intake just to run the brain. It's a lot. It's more than any other organ by a considerable amount. And so to compensate, the mind wants to look for patterns. It craves patterns. Those patterns are stories. And we crave patterns and stories so much that we do it even when we're sleeping, right? Always looking for, what is the story? What is the pattern? What we're looking for here, my thought was, if the mind is built up with patterns, which is something that the medicine taught me, then my suffering must be a pattern as well. And sure enough, I look over at my work going, oh, there's a whole bunch of work right there. And next thing you know, I started working with my team, my tribe, and I found out, yes, that's the case. So it's like, second question is, do I feel that way in my life? And what we're looking for is, yeah, I find myself feeling trapped in my relationship with my wife. But over here, I also feel like my coworkers are always trying to trap me and trying to take my job or whatever it is, right? Oh, it's noticing how you feel the same way in both. Isn't that interesting? 2 completely separate issues feeling exactly the same way. What's the common denominator? What's me? Oh, what if this is coming from me, not at me? So then, do I feel that way? What do I feel? Do I feel that way in my life? And then the next question is where we dive. Where did you pick that up from? We're looking for, when's the time that you remember going from off to on? When was the time that the trigger switch? And that'll drop you down into the deep. And what we're doing is we're deep diving for that specific resonance, that specific vibration, that specific emotional flavor, right? Like, oh, and I always say there was this one moment when, because we don't think in time, we think in moments. We store those moments in story. And so this was what happened. Okay, great. So what am I feeling? Do I feel that way in my life? Where do I pick this up from? And now you're going to find yourself underneath the water, down underneath the water going, this feels really weird. Yep, breathe, calm down. The next question is, where did I pick this up from? And then it's, what kind of a person did that make me? Because I was trapped in the basement, I was always expecting I turned into a very non-trusting, separated myself from every relationship, because at some point they're all trying to get me. and I'm going to be trapped, and eventually, and you're going to torture me. So I can't be in relationship with you, not in the way that I yearn for, because at the end of the day, you're going to trap. Like the sun is going to come up tomorrow. Like you're going to trap me in the basement. That it sits down at the blueprint level. Now that I know what kind of a person this make me, the next question is, what did I yearn for? So what are you feeling? Do you feel that way elsewhere in your life? Where did you pick that up from? What kind of a person did that make you? And what did you really yearn for? And now that you know what you really yearn for, the next question is not who provides that for you, but what can I do to cultivate that experience? If you want to feel safer, then what are you doing to cultivate safety? And what people will tell, like, I want to be happy. Okay, well, what are you doing to cultivate happy? Well, this is where I'm not happy. No, I'm not asking you where you're not happy. I'm asking you where you're cultivating. Most people want to cultivate happiness, but they're focused on where they're not happy, and then they just keep getting more of the not happy. We want to take them down in where the pinch point is. Now they're at the pinch point. We want to open that up and then turn the mind to start to cultivate what it is, so that you're feeding yourself that need, like that thing that you didn't get, or that thing that you felt like you didn't get, or that story that you made. So you can start to rewrite the script and start to I believe you are the medicine. I believe that at the end of the day, I'm the solution that I've been looking for. It's just I didn't know that I was looking for my solution, and I was so busy solving it out here. We have these lower identities, these false selves, and then we also have these sacred identities that we create, because I'm not going to allow somebody to be trapped in a basement on my watch. It's not going to happen. So a part of me came online, which is why I do this work. I got really, really good at doing this work. And the reason why is because, well, I was trapped in a basement. I know what it's like. So now it's taking that same guy that I externalized and turning that internal, so that I can start to feed myself and can start to, because you're never going to get it out here. Like, I was working for Tony, and one of my shadows is you're going to be a bum and you're going to be rejected. And so I'd be a bum. And so I figured I'd make more money. I'd travel the world, talk in front of a bunch of people, and that'd make me good enough. Finally, I'd be rich enough. I won't be a bum. I'm making more money than the guy from Iowa, a Midwestern boy from Iowa, should ever make. And I'm miserable. And not only am I'm miserable, but I'm more miserable than I'd ever been, because as my success grew, the overlay of the you're going to be a bum grew with it, because it's an overlay. So any success I get, I then have to load on top of it. Here's where the danger is. So I just kept feeling worse and worse. It was one of the most miserable times of my life, and it was one of the best. Loved the organization, loved Tony. But in that moment, there were moments where I would taste the success. I've got still have the top dog kind of thing in sell. Like one of the few people that's allowed to travel around the world, training as business technologies. I was miserable. And because as soon as I tasted the success, like Chinese food, all of a sudden 10 minutes later, I'm hungry again. And I'm more hungry than I was when I started eating to begin with. And I had to get off that Ferris wheel that just kept getting worse and worse.
I feel like this conversation was meant to happen. We were supposed to connect today in so many different reasons. The first, I went to school for finance, MBA my whole life. I wanted this corner office with the job title and the money, and then I got it. And I was never as unhappy as I was. I had more money. Then I was 23, making boatload of money at the bank. Not happy, scaled back, followed my passion, started writing books, through the podcast. Even of late, I went, shout out to Carlos Garcia. He had an event here in Tampa. I've been constantly chasing temporary satisfaction. All these things, they're not sustainable. And I'm finding myself, no longer blaming other people for things. It's all coming from within. All of these things, I found more happiness by doing this self-work, getting back into church. For me, that was something that's important. All of these things, I'm finding the answers to. Okay, there's nothing else to blame. My decisions put me somewhere. My relationships led me somewhere else. And now just doing this deep dive in myself, it hasn't been easy, but it's also led me to much more fruitful relationships with outsiders, even right here today. Just more passion for my own work, not just, say, writing a book. Now I've delved deeper to write a book for toddlers in English and Spanish, because I want to help the kids at such a younger age, where I have a mental health book series, and this was the last piece, the toddler age, and that was fulfilling for me. This book isn't now, the last few books were just, okay, another book. It was a temporary high, and then I moved on. Now this one is just so much more passion, and it's just been lighting up my world. So I got to thank you so much for all you delivered to our audience today. Real lights out episode. I don't be sure everyone out there, he will be back in a year, I'm sure, so we can catch him up with everyone. Where can we find more about you online? Everything you offer, all things, Steven.
Yeah, so if you want to connect with me on the web, you can go to Mastering Change, MASTERING, Mastering Change. I think that's what we're all doing here, is we're here to master the art of change. Masteringchange.com. You can find me on Facebook, of course, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I do a lot of work with business owners. The amount of shadow in business is amazing. But you can also download an app. You go down to your phone and you download the 30-day mental cleanse. I've got an intro to shadow work program on there, a 30-day mental cleanse mastermind that I run that's had phenomenal results. If you want to come work with plant medicine, you can come do that. Contact me through the normal channels and we'll get something set up so you can come down to the church and experience Mother Aya, as I call her, but the medicine. It's medicine is what it is at the end of the day.
The app is called the 30-day mental cleanse.
30-day mental cleanse is the app. Yep.
All right, I got that right here in the show notes. Everyone, be sure to go check out all he has to offer. And the show is at a mental health break on all platforms except Instagram and YouTube. We condensed to just Vincent A. Lancy. Be sure to head there. You'll see a couple video previews from this show. And with that, we are both signing off here in Florida. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to meet you.